And we're live, hopefully. Let me just start this off. So, just trying to write and talk. Oh, well, a bit of scruffy writing. So, thank you to those who are already here. This is the 32nd one of these, I think. No, not 32. Is it? I don't know. Yeah, 32. 32nd one of these. So, if you're new here, what I do is 30 minutes or so of gathering information from yourselves and just generally easing into it, having a bit of a chat or whatever. Give people time to join, give me time to settle into the stream, get some ideas like single words and things as ideas for what will make up the sleep meditation. And then around past, I try to do it on past, but sometimes it's a couple of minutes after. Then I create whatever the meditation will be with the ideas I've got on my sheet of paper. So that's obviously how this works. If you find it interesting or helpful, feel free to give it a thumbs up. And if you want more of my content, feel free to subscribe, and then you'll get to see each story each week, each sleep meditation that I do. So all of my sleep meditations that I post on my channel, this is how they're done. I do the sort of recording on a Monday night, for my time at least. And then normally the following Monday, I edit the 2 weeks earlier live stream and sort of clean it up, remove any noises like chair movements and things like that, and then do a thumbnail and publish a cleaned up version that's also recorded via the audio recorder next to me rather than via my webcam, which is in front of me. So that's kind of how this works. I haven't looked for it for months. I just haven't had time to stop and try and find it. So no idea where it is, but I'm someone who just sticks to habit. So as long as I've got that next to me, a pad and a pen, I just don't have any motivation to go hunting for my purple pen. It'll be in here somewhere, but I don't know where. And once it shows up, I'll put that where this pen is. And then that will be the pen I'll be using. Yes, the ghost of this new build property. The ghosts that roamed the petrol station that was here before this block of flats was built. So hopefully everyone's doing well. That's the sort of question I only ever ask on YouTube. Well, normally you'd think that a ghost would come from someone who's died, and I don't think this has been around long enough for people to have died here. As mentioned, I create them all live here. So as I mentioned in my introduction, you lot give me ideas. I then turn them into the sleep meditation here live on air. Yep, there would have been something here before the petrol station. Obviously, in reality, there are no ghosts, but used to always get told off in school for drawing lines without rulers and how messy it looks. Yep, that was the question I asked. Hope everyone's doing well. Similar. Hope everyone's doing well. I'm wearing my Round the Twist t-shirt. For those who are always interested in what t-shirts I'm wearing. And for those of you who know what Round the Twist is. Yeah, people die from more than old age, but generally you need enough time period to elapse for a location to have deaths in that location. There's lots of t-shirts that you've not seen that I've got. I did get rid of loads and loads and loads of t-shirts because I didn't have enough storage space. I got rid of a black sack full and lots of ones I really liked. It was very difficult to decide to get rid of some because I thought, oh well, I haven't worn it for a while, but I like it. It's soft and or it's got some meaning. So yes, as I say, this one is my Round the Twist one. For all those who know Round the Twist. It's just what therapists kind of do. So how I came up with the idea of sleep stories for grown-ups, therapists just do exactly what I do here in therapy sessions. The only difference is that I, back in the early 2000s, I was working with children in children's homes, and so I used to the children had often been abused and had all sorts of negative connotations with their bedrooms and with and difficulties falling asleep, and they would have um, like obviously traumatic thoughts in their mind when they're trying to fall asleep, and they'd get all anxious when they're in their bedrooms and all these sort of things. And so it was often difficult to get the kids to sleep. So I would tell stories my way to help kids to fall asleep. And then I taught the other staff how to do the same. And we would have kind of competitions to see who could get the child to sleep the fastest and end up back at the office first. So you would then obviously do what you can to help the child to relax and fall asleep quickly while telling some kind of a story to them. And so I taught that to the staff, used it myself. I shared about how to get children to sleep using things like sleep stories, and I shared a the rabbit who comes to tea. I shared that sleep story in my 2006 Parenting Techniques That Work book, and then obviously telling stories like this therapeutically is most of my self-hypnosis tracks involve lots of metaphorical stuff because our brains work through pattern matching, and so there was lots of that already in all my work that I was doing, and I would just obviously use it to help people relax, and started doing various sleep meditations for children and adults on YouTube from 2007, was doing them on other places before that. And then just progressed. No one cared. So between 2007 and probably 2018-ish, no one seemed to care really about my sleep meditations. And then for some weird, because it was just a small part of my channel. It was something I did very rarely, maybe half a dozen times a year or something. I'd think, oh, I've got just an idea for a sleep story. Let's make one. And then I'd just make it. Normally, it was always to help something. So it'd be like, oh, I've got an idea for a sleep story that could help with relationship breakups, or I've got a sleep story that could help with weight loss, or I've got a sleep story that could help with grief and overcoming the loss of someone you know were close to or loved or whatever. So I would create them for specific things, and no one really paid much attention to them. And then all of a sudden in 2018, I think it was one of my mountain stories. I can't remember what the title was, but I think mountain was in the title. Suddenly did really well. Suddenly people were subscribing to my channel for the stories and were starting to complain about my other stuff, saying, we don't want to know about your depression stuff, your autism stuff, your stuff about anxiety, your educational stuff for therapists. We don't know about any of that. We just want sleep stories. And so obviously I've told these stories many times. I fought that right through till November or whatever it was, October, November last year, where I thought, forget it. Let's just do sleep meditations then. That's what people seem to want. Let's do it. I don't like doing it, but it's what people want. So that's kind of how I fell into it here on YouTube. Yeah, so it was ghosts. So yes, that's how I've sort of fell into it here on YouTube. And then I've kind of done it ever since, and it makes it easier for me to do it live like this, even though it's still very stressful, but it's easier to do it live than it is not live. And it's the stories can often be longer because I've got far more to work with. So in therapy sessions, you get vast amounts of content from your client to work with. And so that means that you've got all that content to create stories with and what have you. Whereas when I'm just doing a sleep story for no real reason other than to help with anxiety, all of my stories, I focus on helping with anxiety, worry, and stress, and then also sleep. And then I add in a few other bits and pieces sometimes as well. But I always focus on those things. But when I'm doing it myself, I have to try and think, what's the story going to be? So it's all very well knowing what I want to help with it, but I end up thinking, well, what's the story that I want to create here? And to come up with endless stories is a really difficult thing to do without the content. So if I don't have a client sat in front of me giving me content, then it's very hard just to think, oh, let's scribble down ideas that will make a story. So I would end up, until I was doing these live streams as my weekly way of doing these stories, I would end up thumping myself and screaming at myself and whacking myself and getting really angry with myself for being so useless, because I could spend literally 6-8 hours to try and create a 30-minute story because I just couldn't get anything out. I couldn't figure out what I could write, or what I could I don't write it, but I would write a sort of few bullet points, and I would just find it so anger inducing and stressful to do it, but think this is what people want of me, so I've got to do it. And so doing it live like this takes that whole part away from it, because you lot here, as you'll see from all my previous weeks, you lot here give me, I've got to try and get it without the light. Obviously, all these are ideas from yourselves every week. So you lot here give me all the ideas, and that makes it so much easier. Whereas just doing it, that's like essentially you act as a client. You act as the client giving me the content to work with, so that this just becomes essentially like a therapy session, as if I was doing a live therapy session. And that makes it so much easier, because I can do that pattern of it's a live therapy session, get the ideas from the client, turn the ideas into something therapeutic and useful. So yeah, the way the brain works, someone I saw asked about pattern matching. The brain works through pattern matching. So you look for patterns, and our brain just naturally latches onto patterns around us. So you see patterns everywhere. So you see faces, for example. You see faces where there aren't faces, because your brain is hardwired to seek out faces. You see patterns in kind of well, pretty much in everything. But it means that stories obviously are just patterns. Most people know this already, but stories are just patterns that can be used to like teaching tales, for example. So the Odyssey and the Iliad, all these things are ways of teaching knowledge and information in a memorable fashion, and in a way that's kind of dissociated from you, so it's easier to digest because you're not emotionally invested in it. So you can, for example, teach about gaining perspective on things by talking about climbing mountains. You can teach about struggling through adversity, and as long as you keep pushing hard and struggling through, you can achieve success and get to the end result through, for example, talking about someone, maybe a crew of people, sailing the sea to try and find their way through the sea and out the other end somewhere. Um, so yeah, there are the people who generally join in these live chats. There's a bunch of people who do know each other, know each other through the chats and through commenting on the videos, and they're very friendly to the new people who come in and meet them as well. Yeah, or usually friendly. So yes, shortly we can start getting some ideas. That there are downsides to doing these live chats. What I've noticed, for example, is that they lead to vast numbers of people unsubscribing. So every live video that I do like this has about, I think it now is around 10 people a week or so who will unsubscribe from every specific video of mine. So it all starts totting up. And that's after it's aired. So that's not people unsubscribing because they got a notification saying that it was live or something, and they thought, "Oh, I forgot I was uh, following his channel. I don't want to follow his channel. I'll unsubscribe." It's people who've actually clicked on the video and then unsubscribed from the video, sort of weekly. Whereas when I started these, I thought that what people wanted nowadays was connection with the person who did the kind of content that you wanted, and that in relation to the sleep meditations, that people would like the idea that they can contribute to the meditation, so that if they sort of think, oh, I quite like meditation with scuba diving, then they can suggest scuba diving, for example, as an idea during one of the sleep meditation sessions. I can't always get every single idea in, but if you join me often enough, then, or if I keep missing your ideas, then obviously just call me out and say, "Oh, you haven't said my ideas in the last bunch of streams or whatever." And then I always sort of think, right, I'll try and make an effort to get that person's ideas in, especially because just by chance they haven't ended up in a story. Um, so it's the best way to end up having stories on the channel that are what you want specifically yourself, because they're created with your ideas. No ice cream shooting dragons. I don't think I've ever had ice cream shooting dragons. Yep, that's how you got pickles in. But yeah, so that's kind of, obviously that was my thinking, was that if you're a subscriber and you're not really a fan of the live streams, you don't have to. But if you are, you don't have to join in them. You don't have to unsubscribe either. But if you do like the idea of thinking, oh, I've got a really great story idea, I'm going to suggest ideas. Obviously, the type of idea I get. So I know there's some new people here. have to be like single words and things. They have to be something I can then turn into a story, not, oh, can you do a story about, I don't know, a samurai warrior who is um, going to cut the heads off a whole army and scale a mountain. You know, if you give me the whole story, it won't happen and I'll ignore it because I'm not then creating it. Just like if it's something that's already out there, like, oh, can you make a Lord of the Rings story? It won't happen because Lord of the Rings is already out there. And I just want to do something original and not something that someone else is. Partly because one, because they'll probably end up saying, if I use certain keywords, if I use certain keywords, then, for example, in Star Wars, you're not allowed to use the term. I think you're not allowed to use the term Jedi in fan fiction, for example. So if I used the word Jedi, then that would mean that it would get a copyright strike and could have my channel sort of deleted. So you have to use something different to the word Jedi that still makes sense. And that's why, for example, the Church of Jediism talks about Jediism and being a Jediist rather than saying be a Jedi, because using that specific term isn't allowed, as far as George Lucas and now Disney have said. So, yeah, that sounds like it would take ages. Lord of the Rings and all of the other books that go with it is a lot of reading. And thank you for subscribing. So, and it means, so what I get when I press end stream, I get a notification that says this many people subscribed or this many people unsubscribed. So it just tells me a total, this many people subscribed or unsubscribed while the stream was live. And so that will tell me that there's at least one person who subscribed, which is always good. That'll counteract one of the 10 that'll unsubscribe this week. So throw out some ideas. I think I saw something, a caravan on wheel, I don't know, a small caravan. I can't even remember what it was now. It was way back there somewhere. It's always good to have some people from England. Tiny house on wheels. I knew I was thinking of caravan. Yeah, good to have some people from the UK here. Shooting stars. Summer solstice. Chalice. Lake. Helter Skelter. Library. That's something that used to come up all the time. Mist. Oh, that looks like mint. Mist. Yeah, that the detailed suggestion is the kind of thing that I can't do. Pillow fort. Treehouse. Oh, trying to write. Petri dish. Fairies are something else that come up, I think, in nearly every single stream for some reason, and end up in nearly every single story. Freezer. I don't know what the cold seems to come up frequently in some form or another, and then I get complaints saying all my stories in the when the weather's really warm seem to be about cold stuff, whether it's ice cream or being in the Arctic. Cats are another one that come up in nearly every story. Another one I get complaints for. Straw? Cats. I used to go in the freezer when I worked in Butlins to keep cool. I'd go and lock myself in there for like 20 minutes, half hour, just to relax for a bit because I like the fact that it's pitch black and nice and cool and relaxing. Treasure. The one I'm currently editing has treasure in it. Dogs. Birds. Right. So that's all the ideas I'm writing down. So it's about half past. Just have to make sure everything's readable. Give that back a bit so the shadow isn't on it. My challenge is trying to read my handwriting. And as many of you will have noticed, I have republished my Dragon's Fire story, which is obviously my most popular story on, or series of stories on YouTube currently. But at some point a couple of years ago, the old video had developed a fault, and there's a big chunk of audio missing on the video that crosses two stories at the end of one and then the beginning of the next, and then there's, I think, another bit missing after that in the story. Very few people complain about it because most people are asleep long before the end. But because it was getting so many views, yeah, it gets, I don't know, 1,500 views a month or something. I was reluctant to just delete it from my channel um, and then upload another one, and so I just left it up. But I've, the other day, whenever it was, Saturday, uploaded a kind of replacement version of it. What's surprising is when I uploaded the first one, it took off really quickly, became very popular really quickly, as all my old compilation videos used to when I'd post long videos. Um, whereas this one is, my YouTube app is telling me it's the most unpopular video I've uploaded out of the most recent 10 videos, and that no one, that few people like it and few people are clicking on it, which is unusual given that it's also my most popular video on YouTube. So that's very odd, and I've linked on my video to it. So don't know. I think the thumbnail's significantly better than the old thumbnail. I find that's never really an issue. I've made some really awful thumbnails on videos that have done really, really well, where I've just thought, oh, I don't have time to do a thumbnail. I'll just slap that one on there now and I'll do a proper thumbnail later. And then they end up being really really popular. And then I've had others where I thought, oh, that's a really, really good thumbnail. And people have even said, oh, I love the thumbnail, but people haven't clicked on it or whatever. The same with, well, the title's the same. So it's not the title, because the title's essentially pretty much the same title, except that it says that it's the re-upload without the fault. And so, and the first one says that it's the one with the fault. So yeah, so I don't know why that is. If people choose not to watch it, that's fine. But if people complain saying, I don't like the fault in this, as people sometimes do, it's not common, but sometimes they complain, I can obviously point out to them there is the copy I link to that doesn't have the fault in it. So let me just make sure I'm comfortable, ready to start. My phone's upside down so it won't buzz. Yeah, a lot more thought had gone into the current Dragon's Fire thumbnail than the previous one, which I don't think any thought went into, really. What does that word say? Balance? Probably. Must be. So just take a moment to close your eyes and allow yourself to begin to relax. And as you begin to relax, so I'm just going to tell this sleep meditation in the background. And while I tell this sleep meditation, you can comfortably drift asleep. And I don't know whether you'll drift asleep faster to the sounds of my words or the spaces between my words. But as you drift asleep, so you can just listen along in the background. And you can have a sense of being at a friend's house. And you're playing with the friend's children. And you've helped them to build a fort out of pillows and blankets and chairs. And you've built 2 forts. You've helped them to build one, and then you've built one for yourself. And then you're using some scrunched up paper and trying to attack each other's forts and trying to attack each other's thoughts by throwing the paper, seeing if you can manage to strike each other as you run from the fort, having to go and capture some coloured paper like flags and then run back to the fort. And the person that manages to run around and capture the most flags is the winner. The flags are dotted around the house and the garden. And you rush around and sometimes sneak, playing this game with the children. And then after a while, when one of you has won, you take some time to rest. And you all rest back in your thoughts, relaxing down, noticing how the light is dimmer and just more comforting and relaxing inside the forts. And the forts are so soft, with cushions and blankets. You have battery-powered fairy lights hanging in the fort, and you turn those lights on. And as you gaze at the fairy lights, lying back, relaxing on the cushions and blankets, under the dim light in the fort, just let your eyes close for a moment. And as your eyes close, so you begin to breathe in and breathe out, noticing the out breaths being longer than the in breaths as you relax comfortably. And while you begin to comfortably relax, so you notice the muscles around your face relaxing, your cheek muscles relaxing, the muscles around your eyes softening and relaxing, the muscles around the forehead, the temple, down the side of your face, all softening, relaxing. And with each out breath, just noticing that relaxing, spreading down the neck, and down the arms, and down the back, relaxing and softening into the cushions, the blankets, noticing the sensations of the hands touching the blankets, the occasional slight cool breeze blowing from the garden into the house and into your fort, and just blowing gently against your face as you continue relaxing. And as that breathing deepens, so the stomach muscles relax and the legs relax, and you find your mind almost focusing on the word relax with each out breath. As if somehow that's just resonating in your mind's eye. As you relax after being energetic, playing around, running around with those children. And while you drift comfortably relaxed, with that word in your mind, relax, Relax on each out breath. You find that that seems to be all your mind is focused on, while that breathing happens automatically and comfortably. And you find your mind beginning to drift and dream. And as your mind begins to drift and float comfortably into a sleep, so you have the strangest experience that you're in the back of what's almost like a little caravan. You can hear the clippity clop of horses' hooves, and you're aware that this caravan is being pulled along by some horses. And you can feel the gentle rocking and movement as that caravan is pulled along by those horses. The sound of the wheels going around, as if they're going around on a mud track. And you glance out of one of the windows of the caravan and surprised to see that the grass around you seems to be taller than you are. And you put your head almost totally to the window to get a good look up at that grass and to try and see the sky, to try and process what you can see. And as you do, you can see that there are trees towering overhead out of that grass, almost like skyscrapers, arching way overhead. You can see bees, almost a third the size of your caravan, buzzing past, flying to dandelions, flying off to other flowers. And you can find this a curious experience. And so you look out the front and you see that it looks like there are horses at the front of the caravan. And you wonder why yourself, the caravan, these horses are so small. And then the horses turn and start to head into woods. And as they head into the woodland, so the sound of the wheels changes on the dirt. The sounds outside begin to change, sound a bit more muffled. You can hear the rustling of the leaves high overhead, sounds of birds in the trees. And you can feel every bump as those horses carefully navigate the roots of the trees that are cutting across the path. And you look out to see if there's anyone driving and realize that there's no one there. The horses just seem to know where they're going and what they're doing. And after a while, they turn off the path and they start to head up towards the trees, following one of the tree roots. And next to the tree root is what looks a bit like a rabbit hole, and the horse and cart travel in through that hole. And as that horse and cart heads into the hole, so candles on the outside of the cart spring to life. The flames just light up, illuminating and making the tunnel glow. And you can hear a slight echoey sound of the cart and of the horse's hooves. You can notice the way the candlelight dances on the walls of this tunnel. And after what seems like ages, you notice the tunnel opening up into a vast cavern. And then the horse and cart comes to a stop. And you leave the caravan. You walk outside that caravan to have a look around. You take one of the candles from the side of the cart. You move it around. You walk towards the edges of this cavern, walking towards the walls to get a good look at where you are. And you realize that you seem to be in the base of the tree, seem to be in the trunk of the tree. And you can hear high above you the slight reverberating sound as the wind blows on the outside of the tree. That wooden, almost instrument-like sound. And then you notice some green, sparkling, glowing lights high above you. And the candle can't illuminate that high. And so you just watch as those green, glowing lights spiral around and appear to be getting closer and closer. And then those spiraling lights start having a slight buzz to them. And then a fairy that's about the same size as you lands just in front of you. Those wings humming and pulsating, and then relaxing and spreading those wings out. And those wings catch the light of the flickering candle and sparkle in multiple colours. And the fairy begins to explain that today is a special day of the year, and that you've been brought here for a special occasion. And you're curious what that occasion is. And they explain that it's the summer solstice, and that when the time is right, the sun will be just at the right point in the sky, and a light will shine into this cavern and will illuminate a certain point in the cavern. And that point, there'll be a doorway for you to pass through, and that you don't yet know what's through that door, but that you should trust this fairy, that they'll be with you, they'll guide you on a journey. And as you wait for that time of day, you can notice just the faintest hint of light beginning to shine into the tree. And you're still curious how you've ended up so tiny. And the fairy says that doesn't matter, that this moment is what's meant to be. And just as that sunlight lines up with the hole in the tree, so a beam of light bursts through, illuminating dust particles in the air, twinkling and sparkling, and illuminating a certain point on the trunk on the far side. And you head over to that illuminated area. You open the door, and the other side of the door, you see a slide, and the fairy tells you to jump. And so you jump onto that slide and spin around, following that slide down deeper and deeper under the tree. And once you're deeper under the tree, that slide smooths out, and you gradually come to a halt. And you find yourself in the strangest cavern. You can hear the sound of dripping water, the sound of flowing water. And as you look around, you notice somehow there's light illuminating this cavern. And it's just a soft light, just a gentle glow. But it seems to be illuminating crystals throughout this cavern. And you notice the most beautiful blue river flowing, bubbling underground here. And you see what looks like a leaf. The fairy says to climb onto that leaf. You climb on that leaf, resting on that river. The fairy holds on to the stalk of the leaf. You hear the buzzing of the fairy's wings as the fairy guides that leaf boat along this river. And then you begin to hear the sound of faster running water. And you can see some slight rapids up ahead. And the fairy navigates you carefully down those rapids, jumping, twisting, steering through those rapids as you hold on in that leaf with the feeling almost like you're on a powerboat. And then those rapids calm down and that river widens into the most beautiful lake. And above this lake, it's illuminated by a glowing green circle of mushrooms with an intense green glow. And the fairy guides the boat over to the shore. And you can see a white mushroom with a pink crown and white spots. And the fairy tells you to go to that mushroom. And so you head over toward that mushroom. And as you get closer, so you notice that the mushroom appears to have a door in it. So you open the door, walk inside that mushroom, to find that all around the walls inside this mushroom are books. And there's multiple rows of books stretching all the way up the stalk. And you go over and begin to take a look at those books. And the fairy explains that this is a secret library. And this is the entrance way to that secret library. It's the library of knowledge and wisdom of nature. That it contains profound knowledge. The knowledge that nature uses and understands the world by, that the fairies use, that gnomes use. And the fairy tells you that to understand the knowledge in this library, to see it how it truly is, they need to make you a drink. And so they slice off a piece of that mushroom. They chop that into smaller pieces. They boil up a little bit of the water from the lake. They fly up to the green mushroom that's glowing on the ceiling. They slap the green mushroom, creating a slight green mist. They gather some of that green mist, head back down to the boiling water, add that green mist into the water, and then that water begins to turn electric blue as the two mushrooms mix together. And then they put that electric blue drink to one side. And as it cools, so you notice a slight thick white mist seeming to form over the top of that electric blue drink, almost like a heavy mist that's gently frothing over the top of the cup and down the sides. And the fairy looks you square in the eyes and tells you you'll enjoy this drink and the experience you're about to have. Be prepared for the knowledge. And you blow the top of the drink, blowing that white mist away. You smell that sweetest of smells. And then you gulp that drink back in one. And the fairy says, there's a chair over there. It's the most comfortable chair you'll ever sit in. Just take a moment to sit down in that chair while I count back from 10. And on the count of 1, you'll be one with the knowledge, the one with the library. You'll have access to all the knowledge here. And the knowledge this is connected to. And the fairy begins to count 10, 9, 8. And as they count, so your eyes begin to just feel heavier and heavier. Your shoulders, your body feels heavier and more relaxed. You find yourself drifting deeper and deeper into the experience, feeling so comfortable and compelled to want to go with the experience. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And on the count of 1, you feel a tingle through your body. You feel a sense of your eyes opening. And as they open, so you notice the movement, the vividness of the colours. You notice there seems to be connections between things. In ways that you can't understand or explain in words. That movement doesn't just seem to move you, but the world around you seems to move with you. You have this sense of being able to feel your connection with the fairy, with this library. As you gaze up, it's almost as if the roof of this mushroom has vanished, and that the roof of wherever you are has vanished. You gaze up, and you can just see a blanket of stars stretching in all directions. You see the most beautiful shooting stars, fizzing greens, blues, pure white shooting stars. And as you touch the side of the mushroom, so you begin to notice connections illuminating around you. You notice a white pulsing near your hand, the white pulsing on the mushroom, and that pulsing down through the base of the mushroom, and almost like watching lightning spread out from the mushroom. You see that there are many connections from this mushroom And almost as if you have X-ray vision, you see mushrooms in other locations sparkle with that white electricity, almost as if you're seeing this network from the perspective of the mushroom. And you realize that this mushroom isn't just a single mushroom. It covers a vast area with tens of thousands of similar little library systems. And that this mushroom has connection with all the plant life. It communicates with all other life and seems to be the communication network, the network that keeps the forests alive, that keeps gardens alive, meadows alive. And the fairy, who now seems to have a glow around them, and whose wings seem to beat as if time itself is beating, explains to you that all the knowledge in all the books and in all of the libraries is being communicated directly into you here, almost psychically being communicated. And you have this feeling, almost like a slight lightheadedness, as all of that knowledge becomes a part of who you are. And the fairy explains that it's important to be able to transfer this knowledge through species and transfer it through time. And so you've been chosen at this time of year, the only time of year the doorway is illuminated, to be able to take this knowledge and put it to good use, and to help to restore the balance in nature. And while you're accessing this knowledge, you begin to see how far the knowledge of the mushrooms spreads. You begin to see foxes roaming around, almost like shapes, almost like psychic projections somewhere outside of yourself, almost as if you're seeing the world like some vast pencil drawing where you can see through everything, but you can make everything out at the same time. And your brain is somehow processing all of this. You can see hummingbirds darting into flowers. You can see woodpeckers up in trees. You can see the distant leaping and splashing of a humpback whale. As you realize how far this mushroom spreads and communicates. And then after a while, The effects of that drink begin to fade. You begin to feel more relaxed. You relax back into that seat. And then after the effects have faded, so you open your eyes in this seat and find this mushroom has gone back to normal. And the fairy gives you a tiny jar and tells you there's a mix of the mushrooms in that jar. And that will give you a future sense of the world around you. That if you use that before bed, when you're back at your normal size, it'll be just like swallowing a pill, but it'll be able to keep you permanently connected with the world around you, almost having a deep sense of connection with nature, a sense of being a part of nature and helping to keep balance and harmony. And as a full-sized person, the effects won't be so extreme or intense, but you needed this extreme, intense experience so that you'll really appreciate the slightly more subtle experience you'll have taking that small dose when you're a full-size person. And the fairy shows you out of this mushroom and takes you back to that leaf boat and powers that leaf boat up the rapids back to the calmer part of that river, along that river, back towards the way you came in. And you and the fairy leave this area. And then you find your way back to that horse and caravan, and climbing into the caravan, the horse instinctively begins its journey back the way it came. And on arrival back in the garden, you awaken in that fort, and you can hear the children playing in the background. You wonder how long you slept for. You think about the strange dream that you've just had. And then you notice that in the palm of your hand is a tiny little capsule. And it's see-through, and you can see the contents. And you realize what it is. And you realize that this experience was more than just a dream. And so you head outside to look out in the garden. And you can see the route that you took, that horse and cart. You can see the view that you could see from the caravan. in the back of that horse and cart. You can even notice the small, what looks like hoof prints and wheel tracks heading down and off into the woodland. And you decide to follow that and see where it was that you went. And you find your way to the tree, and you can see the route into that tree. And you wonder whether this was all real. And that night, you settle down to sleep and dream. But just before you go to sleep, you take that pill. You eat that little container. And it's really small and easy to take. And while you drift asleep, so you begin to feel that connection with the world around you forming. Only this time, the combination is a bit more subtle, but longer lasting. You can feel that connection forming through your mind, through your body. A sense of how to communicate with animals, how to almost intuitively understand the world around you. And you wake up the next morning, and as you go out for a walk, you walk down the street. You see a cat on a wall. You think about that cat walking towards you. And the cat seems to understand you and walks along the wall carefully, gracefully, perching on the wall near you, reaching its head out for you to stroke its head. And so you stroke that cat's head, stroke behind its ear, rub its back, its sides. It jumps down onto the ground, flops on its side, exposes its belly. You rub that cat's belly for a while. You can hear that cat purring. And you continue walking along the street. And when you get to the end of the road, you're going to cross the road and go into the park. You see someone else standing there to cross the road with their dog. You gaze over at the dog. And in your mind, you tell the dog to sit. And notice the dog sits. You see the dog's tail wagging gently, and the way the dog glances over at you. And you swear you almost see a smile on the dog's face. Before that dog looks forward again. Then when the road's clear, the owner and the dog cross the road, and you cross the road, and you head into the park. And in this morning, you can see the way the low sun is illuminating the dew on the grass, on the cobwebs across the grass that are waving gently in the breeze. You have this sense of almost feeling this world around you. Something that's beyond words, a connection beyond words. And you can feel the way the sun is beating on your face, warming your cheeks, the slight cool breeze, the breath of the early air, the breath of that early morning air. And you walk through this park, curious how you're supposed to put this newfound knowledge, wisdom to good use. You find a tree, you relax down under the tree, you begin to think how you're supposed to put this to good use. And while you rest your back against the tree, you can hear the slight creaking of the tree swaying slightly in the breeze, the rustling of the leaves overhead, sounds of dogs running around, of owners throwing balls for dogs, the occasional sound of a jogger going past, the sounds of people cycling. And as you rest there with your eyes closed, so you hear the sound of a Tibetan bowl being struck by a mallet in your mind's eye. And it's almost as if the darkness in your mind shimmers and turns to light. And as the darkness turns to light, so you begin to have this sense of being in a temple high up in a mountain. And there's someone in this temple, and they walk over to you. And they sit down in front of you. And they tell you that they can guide you, they can help you to learn how to make use of this knowledge. They can help you to channel your connection with the world around you. They tell you they know that you've already tested out communicating with animals, and that you can do the same with people. You can communicate with people on more levels than people think. And they clap their hands together, and they rub their hands together, and they breathe deeply, and they reach out and place their hand just slightly above yours. And you have this sense at the back of your hand, like somehow they're giving off warmth or a slight static electricity feeling. And very slowly they move their hand up your body, and you have that feeling move as their hand moves. Then they move their other hand to join it up the other side of your body. Then they have both their hands near your head. They move their hands around the top of your head, almost touching your head, and you feel a slight tingling, static electricity kind of feeling, a slight warmth, and a deep sense of relaxation as those hands move around your head, around the back of your neck, your shoulders, and back to your head. And they tell you that you can do the same, that you can channel that energy through you, almost like channeling energy up through your feet, through your body, healing energy channeling all the way to your hands. And they tell you to open your eyes and look at them and copy them. And they clap their hands together again, and you do the same. And then they rub their hands together, and you do the same. And then they tell you to gaze between those hands. Just move your hands slightly apart and gaze between those hands. And just notice the energy between those hands. Have a sense of building up that ball of energy. And so you have that sense of building up, gathering up that ball of energy. Almost like a universal energy being gathered up between your hands. They tell you to breathe deeply and comfortably. And to then reach out, and you have a sensation of what it feels like to use intention to move that energy around and help to interact with the energy fields of others. And so they reach out, and so you reach out, and you place your hand just above theirs, and you can feel almost like your hands resting on a cool cushion of air, just slightly above their hand. You can feel the tingling at your palm, your fingertips, as you move that hand and you close your eyes to feel even more intensely. Almost like you're feeling their electric field as you move that hand around their arm, up their shoulders. And they tell you that you're learning how to be able to channel that energy and that you can hover your hands over areas that need support. And you can almost be like a conduit of cleaning out their energy, passing that through to the ground, almost like creating a circuit and then passing energy back through you from the ground, from the earth, from the universe, and back into them. Just being like a conduit, not losing anything of yourself or doing anything yourself, other than just being present. And they have you practice this with them for a while. And they tell you you can do this for yourself as well. You can rub your hands together. You can open your hands about 6 or 8 inches apart. You can gaze between those hands. You can notice that ball of energy there. And then you can work with that ball of energy. You can ask the healing to begin. And sometimes your eyes will stay open, other times they'll feel like closing. And that energy will do what it needs to do as the work is done. And then once that work is complete, that energy dissipates back into the earth, back to the universe. And you feel that release, like lifting a weight off your shoulders. And they teach you this and they have you practice. And they say you can come back here anytime you want. You can come back here when you sleep and dream. You can come back here when you daydream. All you have to do is stop, take some time for yourself. And you can come back here and learn more and practice more. And each time you practice, you can improve your ability to heal yourself and heal others. As something you do most instinctively, and the more you practice, the more instinctive it becomes. In the same way that the more you practiced walking, the more instinctive it became. The more you practiced talking, the more instinctive it became. And then after you have this experience, and they feel that it's time for you to leave this temple, you find yourself back under that tree. You awaken under that tree. You notice the world around you seeming bright and vivid and so full of life. You can see planes flying high overhead. You can watch a graceful hot air balloon, a glowing flame, knowing up close there'll be a sound there, but from back here it's just a glowing flame in silence as it gracefully floats across the sky. You can notice birds flying in flocks and flying in formation. You can notice squirrels chasing each other around trees, dogs sniffing around, running around, butterflies and other insects going about their lives, almost hyper-attuned to noticing the little things in life that others overlook. As you walk your way home, and as you walk home, you stop off at that friend's house again. You pop in just to share the experience you'd had the day before with your friend and how profound that experience was. You notice that when you talk with passion, they seem deeply interested and curious. And your friends' children ask you to come out to the treehouse to have afternoon tea in the treehouse. So you squeeze yourself into their treehouse. You have some afternoon tea with the children before heading home. Almost having some lazy time to process your experiences, to take time for yourself. And that night, you sit out in the back garden, drinking a drink, gazing at the moon through your telescope, curious about when there'll be people on that moon able to gaze back at you through their telescopes. Feeling that sense of wonder when you look through the telescope, as if when you're looking through the eyepiece, the rest of the world fades away and you could just be floating in space with just that view through your eyes. You watch the shooting stars, the twinkling stars in the sky, before heading in to go to bed. and you drift and float comfortably asleep, knowing that you're integrating this knowledge, this learning, and curious how all this newfound knowledge will be put to use, and wondering whether you'll ever see that fairy again, or whether you've seen the fairy and perhaps not recognized them. Maybe in your garden, just thinking it's a butterfly or a firefly or some insect flying by, and curious whether they'll talk to you in your normal human form. Now you have this connection, and with these thoughts in mind, you drift so peacefully, so comfortably asleep.